This week's Parashas Vayechi, begins Vayechi Yaakov Eretz Mitzrayim Shva Esrei Shana, and Yaakov lived in Eretz Mitzrayim 17 years. Vayehi Yemei Yaakov Shnei Chayav Sheva Shanim V'Arba'im Shana, and Yaakov passed away at 147. So it's interesting to note, as we've mentioned many times, that even though it talks about the death of Yaakov, it's called Vayechi, the life of Yaakov, like we find by Chaye Sarah. And our rabbis teach us, Sadikim b'misasam nikra chayim. Righteous people, even after they pass on, are considered living. And therefore, it's called Vayechi Yaakov. And as Shlomo HaMelech has taught us, the day of death is better than the day of birth. So, what does that statement from Shlomo HaMelech mean? It seems very strange on any account, that we assume birth is a time of happiness, simcha, and death is usually associated with bitterness, crying, anguish. So what does Shlomo HaMelech mean? So the rabbis explain with the mashal, there are two philosophers at a seashore, and they're watching. There's one ship that's about to leave, and everyone's celebrating the tailgate party. They're celebrating before the music, and there's another boat coming back from 70, 80, 90 years, no one's even noticing. And the philosophers said to one another, how foolish people are. They're celebrating the wrong ship. This ship hasn't even left yet. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? It's going to sink, the pirates, an accident, something. But this ship that's coming back after 70, 80 years, that's what they should be celebrating, because one can truly celebrate after they find out what happened. When you're born, you're a bundle of potential, but one can see what a person did with his life afterwards. That's what the Torah is telling us. Vayechi Yaakov lived, and even after his death, Sadikim b'misas and nikra chayim, as long as people continue to do good deeds on your behalf, give charity, and you have an impact on someone else, so therefore, you still consider living. That's the custom of putting, we put stones on top of a matzeva when we go for a yard site, or some other time when we visit the cemetery. What's the stones all about? So one pshat is stone, the Hebrew word is sur, which is rock, which also is reference to God, that you're not alone, God is watching. Or, at some point, a rock is something which is permanent. So when you put a rock on top of the monument, you're saying, even though you're no longer with us, but your legacy will continue, because the impact you had on us, that is permanent. And that's what Chazal are telling us, Sadikim and Misasam Nikra Chayim, and that's what the minhag used to be, putting up a monument 12 months after, when you begin to forget the nifter, so then it's reminded by putting up the monument. So the Torah continues and says that obviously Yaakov, before he died, called in Joseph, and he said, promise me, V'sisi imadi chesed v'emes, do me a tremendous chesed, Al na tikbareni b'Mitzrayim, don't bury me in Egypt. And that's the classic burial, is known as the quintessential chesed shalemes. As Rashi writes, Eino mitzapet tashlum, you're not waiting to get paid back anytime soon. Or anytime someone does a favor for you, or you do a favor for someone else, in the back of your mind you're thinking you owe me. But if you do someone a favor, a burial, you're not looking to get paid back anytime soon. And therefore he saw, please don't bury me in Mitzrayim. Why not be buried in Mitzrayim? So Rashi quotes in the Medrash 3 reasons why he asked not to be buried. Sof lios Afra Kinim. The number one is that we'll read all three and then we'll come back and elaborate a bit. At the end, the ground I know is going to be Maka Kinim, and I don't want my body to be taken by the lice. Or one more mystical answer, V'shein Meisi Chutz La'aretz Kayim El B'tzar Gilgul Mechilut, they have to roll to Eretz Yisrael. And thirdly, Shagol Atzani Mitzrayim Avodas L'Chad, they should make an Avodah Zarah out of me. So, the number one reason he said, I don't want the lice in my body. So the question is, what is Rashi talking about? Last I checked, the Makkahs were for the Jews, not for the Egyptians. So why was the Egyptian, so why was he worried about his kingdom going into his body? So the Rambam in Perish HaMishnayos, who writes that the Makkah kingdom happened to the Jews also who lived in Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi, in Goshen it didn't happen as bad. In the Jewish areas it wasn't as bad, but still, they still were affected by the plague of kingdom of lice. And the Shaila is why, so as Rav Nissen Alpert explained, because God's teaching us the lesson is, no matter where you are, you could be in the most Jewish area in America, whether it's Flatbush, Borough Park, places in Toronto, LA, wherever those areas might be, you still have to remember it's still Chutz La'aretz. And therefore, it's a makkah on the land, so you're still living in Chutz La'aretz, so therefore the kingdom will still affect you. But so that's why Yaakov wanted to get out of there before the kingdom got to him. The other answer is more of a mystical thing that you don't want the pain of the bodies rolling to Eretz Yisrael, so therefore you don't get buried, therefore you get buried in Eretz Yisrael. And the third one is not to make an Avodah Zarah. And what all of a sudden now he's worried about them making an Avodah Zarah out of him? Why not all the time, the 147 years, the last 17 years? As we know from history, that Goyim have a habit of taking a Jew and making him into an Avodah Zarah. In other words, it's always the danger is after a person dies, because then you can't talk for yourself. The person could say, you stand for anything they want now, and you're not going to get up and refute it. So therefore, it's always a danger afterwards, and that's why they point out, not only in death, but it's a Moshe Rabbeinu, when we talk about his birth, it says, Vayikach ish mi beis Levi. We wanted to show it was a normal birth. But also at the end of the Torah, when the Torah talks about the death of Moshe Rabbeinu and the burial, we don't know where the burial of Moshe is. And why did they keep the burial place secret? They didn't want to turn it into a Disneyland, but they didn't want to turn it into an Avodah Zarah. And that's why the Havdil, Elef Havdolas, on the negative side, that's why when the Americans went in and they came into Pakistan and they killed Osama bin Laden, so they made sure that they threw his body into the water, so they didn't want to have a burial because they knew the dangers of making a burial and what that place is going to turn into. So that's the Pele here. Rashi's pointing out the three reasons why Yaakov asked Yosef, please bury me in Eretz Yisrael. And also he wanted to establish as well that really, no matter how comfortable you get in Goshen, how comfortable you get in Golus, nevertheless you always have to remember that Eretz Yisrael is your home and not Mitzrayim, and therefore he has to be buried. So at this point, Yosef is the second in command, so he still had enough control to get him out of Mitzrayim. We notice later on, Yosef asked that they take his bones out of Mitzrayim. Why didn't he make sure he was buried out of Mitzrayim? He would love to. At that point, the Shibud already began, and they knew they wanted to be listened to, and therefore he prayed that they take the bones out of Mitzrayim later, as opposed to Yaakov made them pray right now that they could take him out. Vayomer Yishav Alo, and that's what happened. that Yaakov was buried. Yaakov passed away, and he had to work it out with Paro, but he was buried in Maras HaMachpelah with other Avos. The Torah tells us at the end of Parashas Vayechi, Bereshis Nun, Pasuk Yud Tes Chaf, when the brothers are asking Yosef for forgiveness, so the Torah tells us that Yosef answered, "Vatem chashavtam alai ra," you might have had bad intentions, but Elokim chashva l'tova, but God had good intentions. God had His own plan. Rabos machshavas b'leivish, v'asas Hashem yisakum, v'man kayom hazeh, and you don't have to worry. So Yosef told the brothers, don't worry. You might have had evil intentions, or you might have had bad intentions, but God worked it out since no harm, no foul. You didn't cause me any harm, so you don't need any forgiveness. That's what the Orach Chaim writes. The Orach Chaim compares this to this Chavin Vomer Lehem, that since God said, since I was Chashva Latova, I had good ideas with it, so therefore you don't need atonement. The Orach Chaim compares it to a one who intends to give his friend poison, Bishgio Kos Yayim, and just gives him some wine instead. She'eno mischayev klum. The Orach Chaim says he's not chayev at all. Harehim peturim b'sakam gan, and even perhaps midei shamayim. So that's the famous Orach Chaim HaKodesh that Yosef is explaining to the brothers, you don't have to worry, even though you didn't mean well, but since HaKadosh Baruch Hu had His own intention, so it's okay. This Orach Chaim isn't so simple. So what do we see from the Orach Chaim? That even if you have bad intentions, but l'maisa you didn't do anything bad, so then you don't need atonement. Is that true? Well, the Orach Chaim thinks it's true, but does everyone agree? So there's a famous Mishnah in Nazir which talks about a woman taking a neder, saying she's not going to have any chocolate chip cookies, double chocolate chip, ice cream, what have you, and she can't, the temptation is too much. She has to have her ice cream and cookies. But unbeknown to her husband annulled the neder. He did her Torah. So the Mishnah says, nevertheless, it's a discussion in the Mishnah, different opinions, but the Mishnah says, Hashem yislach la, they quote the pasuk in Chumash, that Hashem will forgive her. In other words, from the Mishnah, it's mashma Hashem yislach la. In other words, there's an element of kapara necessary, because what is God? If you didn't do anything wrong, what's the slicha for? So we see from the Mishnah Nazir, if you have bad intentions or intentions for something, and at the end of the day it doesn't come out, so you still Hashem Yisrael, you need atonement. On the other hand, the Gemara in Kiddushin, which tells us Machshava Tova Mitzdaraf L'mais, to have good Machshava, that counts regarding good. If you have a good thought, we count it as you did a good action. But Machshava Ra, you know Mitzdaraf L'mais, but Machshava Ra, we don't. Kind of like the Orach Chaim. How do we reconcile the Gemara in Kiddushin, which says Machshava Ra, Eino Mitzdaraf L'maisa, but the Mishnah Nazir, which says Hashem Yislach La. So the different approaches. One is that Einachinami, Machshava Tova, there's no contradiction. Machshava Tova Eino Mitzdaraf L'maisa. It's true, it's not Mitzdaraf L'maisa, but you still need some form of atonement, albeit a lower level. that's one explanation. That still would help us with the Orach Hayim. A2 is the famous Brisker Rav and Stipler and others on the Torah's commandment of Lo Sachmo, the fact that it's in the Aseres and Dibros as well, that one cannot covet, desire someone else's property. So the Rambam gives us 3 different levels of someone desiring someone's property. So number 1 is an involuntary, when you're walking down the street, you see a nice car, a nice iPad, a nice iPhone, a nice computer, whatever it might be, and you covet that object. So that's an involuntary thing. It wasn't like you weren't planning on. You were walking down the street, there was a beautiful home, or a beautiful kitchen, whatever does it for you. So the Rabbi says that's not Lo Sachmod. That's the din in midos. You have to work on yourself, that you shouldn't desire other people's property. Like the Ibn Ezra says, how could the Torah command us on an emotion? Gemara tells us don't do X, Y, and Z. How could they tell me not to covet someone else's property? I can't help it. So the Ibn Ezra says you can't help it. That he gives a mashal that just like a pauper doesn't covet a prince to marry because the pauper knows that she's so out of reach. There's no way, you're not in the same league, so she wouldn't even consider it. That's how you have to look at other people's objects. And as Rav Dessler points out, just like you don't covet someone else's lenses on their glasses because that's tailor-made for them, so too, that's how you have to view other people's property as well. So they point out, so that's number 1. Not to desire, not even the involuntary desire. Number 2 is you make a plan of attack. You plan on taking this person's object, but it never works out. You never do. So that the Rambam says is Lo Sachmon, the second level. What's Lo Sachmon? Lo Sachmon is, it's not until you get it's not until you get the object that you coveted. So the Rabbi points out an apparent contradiction in the Rambam. The Rambam writes, why don't you get makis? Why don't you get a good old-fashioned whooping for violating Lo Sachmon? So the Rambam writes because it's a lav she'ein bo maisa. It's a lav that doesn't involve an action. And we have a general rule, lav she'ein bo maisa, you don't get makis on. So the Ravid adds on the Rambam, but then the Rambam says you don't violate Lo Sachmon until you actually yikach et zachefet shachaman, until you actually did a mitzvah of taking the object. So the Rambam calls it a lav she'ein bo ma'isa. At the same time, you're actually taking the object. So how do you reconcile? So the Brisker Rav explains, the Stipler, others, the same Yisod, that really Lo Sachmon is an Isser Machshava. It's an Isser Belev. But the question is, a lave is a hard thing to put a measuring stick on, like a difference between a Talmud Chacham and a Tzaddik. A Talmud Chacham is an objective. You could give him a machina, listen to a shir, you could get to know at least how much a person knows. But by a tzaddik, it's an intangible. You don't know who's a tzaddik, who's not. So he says, how do you know when the chemda went too far? So the Rambam writes, really, it's an isser b'machshava. As the Rambam writes, it's a lav she'ein bo ma'isa ve'ein volkin olav. How could you say it's a lav she'ein bo ma'isa you're taking it? But that's taking it, really, it's still an isser machshava, but the ma'isa is a sign, it's a siman saying that you've gone too far. Your desires have gone too far, and therefore now you violate the isser machshava. But it's just a measuring stick to see how far. So it's the ma'isa is just an indicator. And similarly here, some point out it's true Machshava tova ino mitzaref lamaisa. That a machshava ra ino mitzaref lamaisa. A bad thought doesn't count for an action. So, but that's only if all you did it was a machshava. But in the case over here, you actually did a maisa. It might have been a maisa heter of taking the chayfetz, but you did the maisa that indicated that you've gone too far. And similarly here, by the case of the woman with the shvuah, it's true she did a maisa achil of heter, but similarly her maisa shows that it made it more than just a machshava. So if you just do a pure machshava, so then ain't a mitzaref l'maisa. A machshava ra is mitzaref l'maisa, even if it's a maisa heter. If it's a maisa, it shows you've gone too far. You need some element of atonement. However, the third approach is one of the Klei Chemda and other Mefarshim. Then how do we reconcile the two Gemaras, and hence how do we interrupt the Orach Chaim HaKodesh? There's a Gemara in Menachos which talks about fishing on Shabbos. The Gemara tells us in Shabbos, in the 7th parak, Haggadah, the different 39 prohibited activities on Shabbos. We learn about from the Mishkan, the things that were done in the Mishkan, the 39 acts of creativity that were done in the Mishkan is not permitted to be done on Shabbos. So fishing is one of them. Seda, hasad chilazon, you trap a fish, so you violate a biblical prohibition of Seda. The Gemara in Menachos talks about someone who goes fishing. So if you're successful in fishing, you know what you're doing, so then you can violate an issue of deraisa. So let's say, lo and behold, you're fishing, and you throw in a big net, and in addition to catching some fish, a little child fell into the water, and you saved the child's life. So we all know that one of the things that is doche Shabbos, as the Gemara tells us in Yuma, pikuach nefesh is doche Shabbos. The Gemara has different sources. That v'shamu v'neizas Shabbos, better to violate one Shabbos and keep many more. So if you keep the person alive, they can keep many more Shabbos. That's why some point out that's why it's permitted to save a fetus as well, because a fetus hopefully will turn into a human being and be able to perform mitzvahs. So that's why one source is if we see Mila is Docha Shabbos, and Mila is only one organ, so how much more so to save the whole body? So whatever the source is, and the different sources, different nafkaminas as well, but the halacha is Pikuach Nefesh is Docha Shabbos, so not only you have a chiyuv, so therefore this person saved the life of this child or children. And we know if you're going to save someone's life, it's permitted. So the question is here, his machshava was to fish, but the result was he did a maisa about solas nefashos. So how do we view this? That's the Gemara Shaila. The Gemara gives us the lamdas. Do we go basa machshava or basa maisa? Do we go by the thought process or go by the action? So Gemara says if we go by the machshava, so then his intent was to machal Shabbos and fish, so you should be chayev. But if we go by the maisa, we live in the olam ha'asiyah, we go by the maisa, so then it's pikuach nefesh. So that's a discussion in the Gemara there. We think the paskin you go by the maisa. You have to explain the Rambam differently. So comes along the Klei Chemda. There's a Pilpul Sefer on Chumash, and he points out when this whole discussion in the Gemara on whether you go basa maisa, you go basa machshava, that's only regarding mitzvahs ben adam l'makom. Then we have it about mitzvah b'adam l'chaveiro. Everyone agrees it's the totzah, it's the result, and therefore we don't value the machshava the same way. Like the Chazal tell us, someone walking down the street and a $20 bill falls out of the pocket, not even knowing, and an ani picks up the $20 bill. Chazal, you don't even know it, but Chazal has told us you have fulfilled your mitzvah of tzedakah. So we see when it comes to tzedakah, it is totzah oriented, and that's the fundamental difference between mitzvahs b'ad adam l'makom and mitzvahs b'ad adam l'chaveiro. Mitzvahs b'ad adam l'makom is usually the concern is on with the machshava, but mitzvah b'ad adam l'chaveiro, it's result oriented. Like we say, the tefillin shel rosh represent b'ad adam l'makom because only HaKadosh Baruch Hu knows what's in your head. But the hand, the action, the people only care about what you do, not what you're thinking about. If someone, you could think about visiting the sick all you want, or thinking of doing Nicham Avelim or any other mitzvah. If you don't do it, you're not really helping anybody. And if someone donated $1 million machine and said you could use it and it could save your life, except you have to mention who donated. The person won't care who donated. He'd even personally thank him afterwards. He doesn't care what his intent was. He only cares if you help me, you help me. And that's why we find by mitzvah strichas kavanah, of Shlomo Zalman and others point out, we usually only apply the call mitzvah strichas kavanah. We find it in the Gemara by shofar, by lulav, by mitzvahs and amul makom. But mitzvah and chaveiro, your kavanah is still important, but it's not the ikr, it's not the main thing. In other words, because someone could spend 3 hours in the hospital visiting someone, making them feel better, but you tell them if they forgot to have in mind, it's difficult to say they haven't fulfilled the mitzvah. Maybe they haven't fulfilled the mitzvah b'shrei muso, but the ikr is the totzah and not the maisa. And that's how perhaps they want to answer up to Orach Chaim HaKodesh. When it comes to mitzvahs that am l'makom, so then you could say, then that's what tzarach kapara, the woman violated a neder, so therefore even if you have a machshava ra, you need a kapara. But so outside Adam l'makom, the sin the brothers did, so they need a kapara. But outside Adam l'chaveiro, about causing harm to Yosef, or the non-causing harm to Yosef, that's what we say, machshava tova, machshava ra, inu matzaref l'maisa, you don't need atonement, and that's the fundamental distinction between mitzvahs but Adam l'makom and Adam l'chaveiro, and that was the cause, and that's what the parish, that's what we've been mentioning. Yosef and the brothers getting back together, and reconciling, and that's what the brothers said. Don't worry about it. Yosef saying, don't feel bad. You might have had evil intentions, but HaKadosh Baruch Hu had other ideas. So this week's Parshas Vayechi, deals with the death of Yaakov Avinu. That Vayechi Yaakov, and Yaakov lived 147 years, and as Chazal tell us, Tzadikim b'misasam nikra chayim, righteous people even during their lifetime are considered, even after their death are considered living, and that's why we find by Chaye Sarah as well. The Torah is called Chaye Sarah, yet it talks about the death of Sarah. So we find that the Torah talks about the death of Yaakov, and it's called Vayechi. And right after that, so we're obviously before that, but in the Chumash after that, that Yaakov gives directions to Yosef and his brothers, make sure, to his sons, make sure I'll not tikbareni b'Mitzrayim. Make sure I'm not buried in Mitzrayim. I'm not buried in Egypt. And I want you to take me to Eretz Yisrael, which in itself is a halachic shaila. Not in this case, it's Kodaman Torah anyway, and Yaakov's case was different, but it in general, it's a discussion in the poskim, in the earlier commentators, whether there's an Indian. Everyone agrees if you lived in Eretz Yisrael, then you have a right to be buried in Eretz Yisrael. But someone who lived in Chutz La'aretz, and now to take the body, which is Avi Avos Hatuma, and bring it to Eretz Yisrael, so that's a shaila among the Mefarshim, different schools of thought. Today there's a common custom, it's still, I think Rav Henke might have been against it, because the different reasons also that people, for Yisod, most people don't have a lot of money, they're going to feel the pressure of spending all this money and sending the body to Eretz Yisrael when the people need the money to live on, with different reasons, whether different social issues or different, halakha, because everyone agrees for a tzaddik or one of the Gedolei Hador, for a special individual, then everyone's moda, then it's okay to send to Eretz Yisrael. For the average person, discussion, the minute today seems to be, assuming you want to, is anyone gets sent, it seems to be a prevalent minute to go ahead and send people, and people fly over there. So in fact, there's an interesting discussion, a very interesting chiddush of Rav Shlomo Zalman regarding someone who is going to send the body over by plane. So there's a concept of aninis, a concept of an onain. An onain is someone they lost their loved one, and the loved one died, 7 relatives, and it's in between the death and the burial. And even though Minat Torah, the halacha of aninis only applies to karbanos, ma'aser sheni, but midrabanan is a din of patur mitzvahs. It's a din that an onain is exempt from mitzvahs. And that's the machlokas Rashi, Rashba, Tosfos. What is the nature of the exemption? According to some Rishonim, it's based on osek b'mitzvah pata min mitzvah. You're involved in the kvura, so you're exempt from other mitzvahs. Or tirda, you can't. If you do other mitzvahs, you can't focus on the burial. Or, as Tosfos goes into Yerushalmi, it's based on kvol del shel meis. My nafkamina. The nafkamina is, if you go by the first 2 reasons, okay. But if I could rise above the situation, then it's okay if an onain feels he could rise above the situation and still do the other mitzvah properly, so then it's okay for an onain until he'd be pater, but he can volunteer the mitzvah if he's up to it. Well, according to the reason of the Yerushalmi, the Bali Tosfos, Kvodo Shomeis, it's a Golei Glarash. You can't do it. That's why we seem to pass in like Tosfos Lahalacha. Not only is it pater, but it's usher. I won't get into it. It's a separate share. What happens if he does it anyway? Let's say an onain made Havdalah, or an onain did another. That's a separate share. So so I owe you one. You remind me. So the question is, so Pashtus, you're an onain from Tchilasa ad Sofa. So basically, from the time of death until the burial. Rav Shlomo Zalman has a big chiddush. He seems to write, there's aninis l'chatzon, that's my expression, that's not what he uses, but he says the following chiddush. He says that before you get on the plane, we're talking about someone who's bringing, so the body's on the bottom, and the person's on top. So it's actually before the Chachmas Adam already talks about that today that we have a chevra, is a Yerushalmi, Tosfos brings out, once you give over the body, they carry it on the shoulders, that's it. So what does that mean? So the Chachmas Adam says, that's it. We give it over to the chevra Kadisha. The whole exemption of owning doesn't apply today. Why should he do mitzvahs? He's not doing anything. The chevra Kadisha does all the work. And the Noda B'Yehuda disagrees. Someone told me that's the Lubavitch sheet, but I don't know. And the Noda B'Yehuda disagrees and says, no, that's Gemara, the Chazal they're talking about, with someone when they actually been doing the Kvura, they're actually carrying the body, and then when they get to the outskirts of the city and it's too dangerous to go, they give over the body, and then that's it. Then they're going to begin their Avelis now. But not in our case, no, where you're giving over to the Chevra Kadishan, you still have to worry about the eulogy, making phone calls, doing all that. You're constantly osek b'kfura. It's considered being osek b'meis, and therefore you're exempt. So that's the way we assume. Like the Nodi Yehuda, most assume that the exemption applies today. So how far does that go? So Shlomo Zalman wants to modify it. He says, Bishloma before you get on the plane, so you put them in a mitzvah. And when you get off the plane, you put them in a mitzvah. But his chiddush is, when you're on the airplane for 10, 12 hours and the body's underneath, there's nothing you can do. So you chayav the mitzvahs. Whatever you got to daven, you got to make brachas, whatever the things you have to do. That's the chiddush of Shlomo Zalman. And many Achronim disagree. The Emes Yaakov Kamenetsky, and others, Rav Herschel Schachter, they say, what do you mean? There's no concept of Rav Yaakov right there. You can't say I'm owning half the time and not the other part. Once you're an owning, always an owning. And therefore he says that it's not true, and I think that's this pashas we go by. Even on an airplane, you consider you have the status of, well, you're an owning, but you have the status of you are patam and mitzvahs l'gamris. That's the chiddush of Rav Shlomo Zalman, that a big chumrah. And in fact, that was his sheet. In fact, they say from the Nishmas Avram, when he was very close with Rav Shlomo Zalman, and I guess he was in the hospital with Rav Shlomo Zalman when his wife died, Rav Shlomo Zalman's wife. And he said on his way home, he told the Nishmas Avram, when I get home, I'm going to say Kriya Shema Lamita tonight, because 5 minutes before I go to sleep, I'm not going to be osek in the mace anymore. So again, that's a big chiddush. Most don't assume that way. We don't assume right before. In fact, it reminds me of a shayla I got, that someone asked me, they were an onain, and the burial, actually it was the case where they're going to Israel, but that wasn't even the shayla about the shayla on the plane. This is Friday afternoon, and the flight was probably going out Saturday night or Sunday. He said, his brother, first he asked me the shayla, he says, what about mincha on Erev Shabbos? Do I daven mincha Erev Shabbos? So I said, well, Pashtus, I said, well, I'd look it up, but off the top of my head I'd say, Pashtus, you shouldn't be davening, because you're an onain. You're an onain until Shabbos. But he said, someone his brother spoke to Rabbi Mordechai Willig, who said he should daven mincha a little later than the usual Friday, and then he could daven mincha right before Shkia. So he said to me, yeah, but I can't daven too much. I'm always davening right before Shkia. I said, okay, but it was like right before Shabbos, so I said, I haven't looked it up. I said, if I will have said it, I'm a kabo. I'm saying, obviously, what to rely on, then, I haven't looked it up, so I could go, so you could definitely follow that shita. So then later on, I never got back to him, but then I forgot about the shayla. Then when I was looking it up, and so actually I saw that, I think it's totally on this shayla, that he seems to be working with, so what's the reason why? He seems to be working with Shlomo Zalman's mahalach, which to me sounds like a chiddush, that, well, because what is he saying? 3 minutes before Shkia on Shabbos, I can't be osek b'meis, so therefore, it's like being on an airplane according to Shlomo Zalman, and therefore daven mincha. But the pashas I saw it's not that way. Is that and that I think so it seems to be a machokas Rav Shechter versus Rabbi Willig. Rav Shechter didn't think so either. He said he thinks the pashas. Because even the last couple of minutes you're thinking about your love, you're thinking about the kfur, who did I leave off, did I make a phone call, what am I going to say at the eulogy, whatever you're thinking about the osek of the maze, and therefore he thought that one should not daven mincha, but once you're makabel Shabbos, so then you could daven, kabbalah Shabbos. So this issue about this chiddush of Shlomo Zalman, a big chiddush, but I would say Rav Shlomo Zalman is someone who can have chidushim, and people have a right to follow Rav Shlomo Zalman, but it seems to be more a minority view, but it's tremendous chiddush regarding airplanes, the Yichayev and Mitzvahs, and in fact, saying Kriya Shema Lamita, and then perhaps the same issue about davening, because to me this isn't such an uncommon question, the Mincha Erev Shabbos. So Mincha Erev Shabbos all tie into this issue of how far do we take the Petur Mitzvahs? Like, do we take it that it's once we work with the Nose of Yehuda that giving over the Chevra Kadisha doesn't exempt us, so the Pashtus is then Mitchilat Sofa, like Rav Shechter, Rav Yaakov, and others, or you have the other school thought, Rav Shlomo Zalman. I don't know where Will goes with Rav Shlomo Zalman. Again, this is someone quoting Rabbi. I didn't speak to Will directly, so if he didn't say it, he didn't say it, but someone quoting Rabbi Will saying, he said, but I don't know if he also would, if he takes Rav Shlomo Zalman, I don't know if he takes Rav Shlomo Zalman like the Kriya Shema and the plain either. That seems to be the issue here.